More than 2.5 million people in the United States have now been infected by the coronavirus. States, particularly across the South and West, now seeing a surge in cases. To better understand the spread at the state level, Instagram co-founder Kevin Systrom launched RT.live in April. The site tracks the effective reproduction numbers of the virus. Joining us right now to explain that and what we can learn from it is Kevin Systrom. And back with us is Dr. Scott Gottlieb, former FDA commissioner and CNBC contributor, also serves on the boards of Pfizer and Illumina. And I go to the site every day, as I know, well, Kevin, you go to it every day because you've built it. But I know that Dr. Scott Gottlieb goes to it every day as well. Kevin, just give us a little of the backstory first before we begin. You know, you came having created Instagram. You left about a year ago, and then you created this. How did it happen?
Yeah, well, what I'll say initially is that this site is a public good. It's not meant to be a new company. It's not meant to be anything other than a resource for people to come and understand how the virus is spreading near them. A lot of people have questions about what R is, and R is really just how many people get sick because one other person is sick. It's a great way to track how quickly the virus is spreading, and it's clear that people like Dr. Gottlieb and others have figured out that this metric is really useful in understanding where we are.
Just talk for a moment about collecting the data, because you're inputting data sources from across the country, and I imagine certain states are going to be providing better data than others right now.
Yeah, the data is actually the hard part, which is to say it's unreliable, it's noisy, it's delayed. I mean, not many people realize that the data you're looking at today is actually delayed almost a week, maybe even longer. There's a 5-day incubation period. And then by the time you get symptoms and you decide to get a test and you decide to, report that test, it's been over a week. So the data you're looking at today doesn't actually give you a real view into how things are going. It's like driving, a car 100 miles per hour down a freeway, trying to control it by looking in the rear view mirror. That's one of the challenges we have with the virus today. And that's part of why we built the site, because we wanted to give people an insight into how the stats are actually developing with a reliable algorithm.
Hey, doctor, let me ask you, I know you look at this site every day and you look at Nevada, which is really the worst of it. If you look at this site, by the way, green means that the numbers are going to go down. Red means potentially, not even potentially, they will by default go up because anything more than one is going up. What do you worry about most right now in terms of some of these states? There's states like Montana, which is actually has the second highest R0, and yet the total numbers are lower. So I'm trying to just figure out how to balance all this. I should also mention, by the way, New York, my beloved New York, actually tweeted out over the weekend, went red for the first time over the weekend.
Yeah, I think the value of this site, there's a lot of values of this site. I think one of them is that you can look at it over time. So you can look at how the states are changing over time. And that's very useful to see how the epidemic's being is coursing in different states. They're trying to also smooth out the data. Kevin talked about the difficulties with the reporting. They're trying to smooth out the variability in the reporting. And the other thing to remember about this site is we talked initially during this epidemic back in January and February about the R0, how many new infections you get for every infection that occurs. That has to do with just the dynamics of the virus itself. This is looking at RT. This is looking at the rate of transmission of the virus now. So it's taking into consideration things like the fact that you have mounting cases in New York already. So you've already had a lot of people exposed to the virus in New York. So the rate of transmission is going to be less in New York because a lot of people are immune to it. So it's taking into effect that dynamic impact of the virus as it spreads through a population.
Kevin, in terms of just looking at the chart today, what states are you most worried about? And are there states that are in the green now that have turned just in the red like New York? Does that make you worry more or not?
Well, here's what I'm really worried about. About 2 months ago, you had 34 states above 1.0. And I'm sorry, right now you have 34 states above 1.0. And 2 months ago, that number was only 5. So you have an incredible rebound. I mean, people like to say we're not in a second wave. I don't know what a second wave if that's not a second wave. But Connecticut, Massachusetts, and D.C. have all done a tremendous job. Florida and Texas, two of the most populous states in the union, right, have an enormous infection, and it's growing. Florida at 1.4 and Texas at 1.25. California, even though it's seeing record numbers, actually, I worry less about California because the testing has increased so much. One of the reasons you're seeing so many more positives is because they're testing so much more. At the same time, California itself actually has a bit of a second wave, although far less serious than something like Florida and Texas. But backing all the way up, this is one metric of many that you should use to understand whether or not the virus is spreading quickly in your state. There are many other sites you should go to, and then you triangulate among all of them how you think things are going. And hopefully policymakers are doing that as well.